What could be better than a Sephardic-Turkish style spinach and cheese borreca made with the dough that my grandmother taught me how to make and a delicious spinach, feta, and parm filling. Yum. Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Sephardic-Turkish style spinach and cheese borrecas. Yes, another delicious version of a borreca. So if you've watched my channel before, you may have come across my most popular video, which is my how to make authentic Sephardic-Turkish borrecas. And those are filled with a delicious mixture of potato and kashkaval cheese. But in this particular version, I'm going to be making a spinach filling, which I'm going to be using feta and Parmesan cheese to make, and it is going to be a super yummy, super different, absolutely delicious borreca. Of course, I'm going to be using my grandmother's recipe for the dough. It's going to be flaky, golden, absolutely yummy, and with that spinach filling, oh my. And of course, you know that I have some other fillings up on my channel. I have an eggplant and cheese version. I actually have a sweet version with nuts, which is absolutely delicious. And I also have an eggplant, tomato, and onion, the handrajo version, which is also divine. But this one, you're totally gonna love it. So I am super excited to teach you how to make it. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the dough part of today's recipe, you will need 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, a half a teaspoon of salt, a half a cup of vegetable oil, plus an extra tablespoon or so if needed, a half a cup of lukewarm water, and 1 egg, which you will be using for an egg wash. This is what I like to call my standard borreca dough recipe, which makes 18 borrecas, but I'm going to be making plenty of filling, so you could double this to make 36 borrecas instead. And for the filling part of today's recipe, you will need 1 pound of frozen spinach thawed, 7 ounces of feta cheese, 6 ounces of shredded Parmesan cheese, plus some grated Parmesan cheese for sprinkling on top of our borrecas, and 4 large eggs. As I said, this is going to make plenty of filling. So if you're not doubling up on your dough recipe, then I'm going to show you what you can do with the extra filling by baking it off, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. So definitely don't skimp out on the filling. Of course, you could cut this recipe in half and then use the standard dough recipe, half of this filling, and you're good to go. But I'm telling you, you're going to want that extra filling. It's so good. You will also need a baking tray and a cooling rack. I'm using a dough cover, but you can use plastic wrap instead because we will be using that plastic wrap also as we work, along with some parchment paper. And I'm using a handheld roller, but you can use a standard rolling pin, or you can actually make these by hand instead. You're also going to need some oven mitts and a medium bowl for crumpling your feta. Then you're going to need a pastry brush, 2 forks, a serving spoon, and a serving fork, 2 small bowls, a couple of wet measuring cups, some dry measuring cups, and some measuring spoons, and a large bowl and another medium-sized bowl. And I'm using this great tool to squeeze the water out from my thawed spinach. I absolutely adore this tool. Ever since I discovered it, I no longer resort to squeezing out my spinach bunch by hand. It makes the job so much easier. I do feature that and some other tools like the handheld roller and a few of these other tools in my Sally That Girl in the Kitchen Amazon store. There's a little link to that right on the banner of my YouTube channel page. You'll see it as a little A. If you just click on that, it'll take you directly to my Amazon store. And of course, there's also a link to it on my Facebook page right at the top. And finally, you'll also need a long, thin knife and a couple of kitchen teaspoons. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is thaw your spinach. You're going to make sure to pull that out of the freezer the evening before or the morning of, depending on what time you are going to prepare your borrecas. You definitely want to give that a chance to thaw completely before you start working. So I just pull it out the night before, place it in my sink, so they're ready in the morning when I'm ready to go. So I'm going to be using 16 ounces, 1 pound for this particular recipe. So it's now the next morning, and I'm grabbing a medium-sized bowl, and to it I'm adding 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and right on top of that I'm going to add half a teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to use my trusty fork, yes, a serving fork, my tool of choice, and I'm just going to combine that flour and salt. I want to make sure that that salt is well incorporated and well distributed amongst the flour. So now I've measured out a half a cup of vegetable oil, and I'm just going to drizzle that oil right on top of this dry mixture. And then once again, I'm going to grab my serving fork and I'm going to incorporate that oil into this dry mixture. And you'll notice that I'm just turning the bowl, and I'm also just scraping down the sides because I want to make sure to incorporate all of that flour. I want to make sure it's all coated with oil, and as I use my fork, I break up the clumps that start to form, because what I'm looking to do is create a mixture that resembles sandy colored pebbles. I want small pebbles, and I don't want to see white flour. So I use the side of my fork and I break down any large clumps that form as I incorporate the ingredients. And as I said, I'm trying to get a sandy pebble mixture. And so it just takes a couple of minutes. And as you see, I'm just scraping down the sides of the bowl using my fork and just breaking up any large clumps, and before you know it, you'll have this sand-colored mixture. It's no longer going to be white, and the addition of that oil has just completely transformed the ingredients. Now, this is the point where you take a look at it, and if it looks a little white, then it's okay to add just a touch more of oil, because you don't want your mixture dry. So I have a lot of experience, so I'm just going to pour directly from the bottle, but I would suggest you measure out about a tablespoon of oil and then add it in that way, because you don't want to add in too much oil either. You don't want an oily mixture. But if you think that your mixture seems a bit dry, it's okay to add another tablespoon or two to the mixture until you get everything to appear sandy in color. You don't want to see any white, and you don't want too much loose flour. That's how you know that the mixture is ready to move on to the next step, when you've added enough oil that you're getting a lot of little clumps, little pebbles, for lack of a better word, and there's not a lot of loose flour left in your bowl. And as you see, I'm mixing, but I'm breaking up the larger clumps because I'm looking to make small pebbles and just get that oil all over my flour so that I don't have any white flour left in my bowl. So I added about a tablespoon or so, up to a tablespoon or two, and now it's looking great. It's got the texture I'm looking for. So now I'm measuring out half a cup of water. I'm gonna pop that in the microwave. I put it in somewhere between 30 and 40 seconds. You don't want it steaming hot, but you definitely want it nice and warm. And then you're gonna bring it over and you're just gonna pour it right over this mixture. And then once again, using your fork, you're going to incorporate the water into the mixture. But now you're gonna see how quickly your mixture starts to transform and it becomes a dough. So all I'm doing is I'm gently using my fork to incorporate all of those pebbles that we had previously created into this dough, and just very quickly with my fork, very gently, I'm just turning the dough over onto itself. And you saw in a matter of seconds, what was a loose sandy mixture is now almost as if by magic turning into a dough. So now I'm going to scrape off my fork and I'm going to go in with my hands. Of course, they're nicely washed. I'm constantly washing my hands as I cook. And I'm going in with my hands because I'm going to use the dough ball itself to pick up any little remnants, any little sandy balls of flour and oil that cling to the bowl. But at this point, you're going to notice that nothing really should be clinging. You're just going to take that dough ball and just clean off the sides of your bowl, and it just feels absolutely amazing in your hands. And you don't want to over knead this. You just want to bring it together. And while you do so, you just want to feel for any of those pebbles in this dough, because if you feel any little clumps, then just use your fingers to break up those little clumps. But you saw how quickly this transformed into a beautiful ball of dough. It's smooth, it doesn't have any little clumps in it. It's absolutely perfect, and it's going to be perfect to hold that yummy spinach and cheese filling. It's just looking gorgeous. So I've made it into somewhat of a ball, and I'm going to place it right back into that same bowl. And once again, I washed my hands, and now I'm going to grab my dough cover, but you can use plastic wrap instead. And I'm going to cover my dough and let it rest while I make my filling. It gives the perfect amount of time for it to rest. So now I've added my thawed spinach into my amazing tool, which I love. I can't stress enough how much I love this tool, because I added an entire pound of spinach, 16 ounces, into my tool all at once. And all I'm doing is pulling down on this lever and squeezing out that water, and I'm left with perfect spinach without the liquid to create my filling. This has just completely changed the game. I cook with a lot of spinach. I make tapadas and fritadas and borrecas and all kinds of things, which are all up on my channel. And I use frozen spinach a whole lot. And I make really large batches of things, and this is just a complete game changer. My least favorite part used to be squeezing out my spinach, and now it's a delight. So now I've poured out the excess water and I dried off my bowl, and I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a serving spoon, and I'm just going to take all of that now perfectly squeezed out spinach and add it into my large bowl. I'm going to create my filling right here in this same large bowl. So I'm just going to add all my spinach in, and then I'm just going to set this bowl aside for just a moment. And I'm bringing over another medium-sized bowl because I bought my feta in brine and in a block form because I like to crumble up my feta myself. So if your feta did come in liquid, then of course you're just going to spill out that liquid, and then you're going to grab your block and you're just going to break it up by hand. You are definitely looking for small crumbles of feta. You don't want any really big chunks because you want to be able to distribute this cheese really well amongst the spinach. So you don't want huge clumps of feta. You just want to break the feta up really well. So now, of course, I'm going to wash my hands once again, and then I'm going to bring over that large bowl where I have my spinach, and I'm going to grab all of this now beautifully crumbled feta, and I'm going to add it right on top of my spinach. And then I'm using shredded Parmesan cheese. It's just super convenient, and it actually works really well in this filling. It's just the perfect complement to that feta cheese. It's got the perfect balance, and I just love the combination of cheeses. And so all I'm doing is using my serving spoon and I'm incorporating these ingredients. And of course, if I see any clumps of feta that appear a little too large, then I'm using the side of my spoon and just breaking those up as I mix my ingredients together. So now my cheeses are in, and I'm gonna grab 4 eggs, and then I'm gonna crack those eggs into a bowl, and I'm gonna beat them well with a fork. Now these eggs are gonna help bind these ingredients together, and it just creates the perfect filling for a borreca. It just kind of works as the glue that brings everything together. It's just absolutely perfect. So I'm just adding those 4 beaten eggs right in. I'm using large eggs. And then once again, using this serving spoon, I'm just gonna incorporate the eggs really well into the mixture. And I'm using kind of the back of my spoon to just kind of smush the mixture as I go. It just becomes perfect and creamy, and it's got the perfect amount of moisture. And you'll notice, of course, I didn't add not even a pinch of salt to this mixture, because there's plenty of salt in the feta cheese, in the Parmesan. It doesn't need anything else, just the spinach, the cheeses, some egg to bring it all together, and it's the perfect filling for these delicious spinach and cheese borrecas. So now I've incorporated all of the ingredients. My filling is ready to go, and I'm going to replace that serving spoon with 2 kitchen teaspoons that I'm going to be using when I make my borrecas. And now's a good time to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and your dough has rested perfectly while you made your filling. It's been about half an hour or so. And then you're gonna grab your dough and pull it right out of your bowl. And of course, my counter is sparkling clean. I clean it really well before I start cooking. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna gently create a bit of a log. I'm just gonna extend this dough a little bit and form a bit of a log, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna portion out my dough so that my borrecas all turn out similar in size. If you don't portion out your dough, you're not gonna know how many borrecas you're gonna get. And this way, I always get 18 borrecas, and they're all very similar in size. This is a trick that my grandmother taught me, and I do it every single time that I make my borrecas. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna divide my dough in 3 parts, because I'm trying to get 18 borrecas out of this dough. So then, of course, from each of these 3 parts, I'm gonna be creating 6 borrecas. So I'm just gonna show you real quick that I'm looking for these parts to be very similar in size. And of course, if I notice that one piece is a little bigger than another, then I just cut off a little piece and bring it over to the other one. This dough is super forgiving, and it just sticks together really well and really easily. I'm just gonna put it right there, and it's perfect. All I'm looking is to create 3 portions of dough, very similar in size. So now I took one of these, and I'm gonna split it in 2. And then from each of these portions, I'm gonna get 3. So of course, I am now creating 6 portions of dough from this one portion. And then of course, I'm gonna do the same with the other 2 pieces of dough, so that I have a total of 18 pieces of dough. And I'm gonna show you what I do once I cut them. I just grab the piece of dough and gently roll it in my hands and make it into a ball. That's it. Very gently. You don't want to overwork it. And then I'm going to just place it right back into that bowl where my dough was resting. And that's it. I'm going to repeat it over and over. And of course, from this one piece, I'm getting 6 balls. And then I'm going to repeat the process with the other 2 pieces of dough to make 18 balls of dough. And yes, you guessed it, 18 beautiful spinach and cheese borrecas. Now at this point, I want to cover my dough balls, because each dough ball is going to make a borreca, but it takes a little time to form each of them. So I don't want my dough drying out as I cook. And since my hands are going to be greasy, I like to use plastic wrap for this step so that I don't have to touch my beautiful dough cover and get it all full of grease. And I'm just gonna pull out one at a time and just keep them covered while I'm working. So I'm bringing over my handheld roller and I'm bringing over my beautiful spinach and cheese mixture, and I've prepared a tray that I coated with parchment paper. And now I'm grabbing one ball of dough and I'm gonna show you how to shape your beautiful borreca. So you can use the hard part of your hand. You can use a handheld roller, a rolling pin, whatever you prefer. And I've made these many times without a rolling pin at all. If you're traveling, you're on vacation, you have a kitchen where you're at and you want to make some, you don't even need a rolling pin. You just need your hands and you can create beautiful borreca. So what am I doing? I'm just flattening out the dough a bit and I'm making a shape. I want to call it similar to an oval. I want like an oblong shape, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this beautiful flat oblong shape to create my borreca, and I want to make sure it's not sticking to my counter. Now I'm working on a quartz counter, which is super clean, but if you don't have a counter where you can work on, then just grab some wax paper. You can work on a table, you can work anywhere. Wax paper works beautifully. And then I've grabbed my 2 kitchen teaspoons and I brought over a nice amount of spinach and cheese filling. And I want to make sure that's in the center. I want to kind of leave the borders open, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that filling and I'm going to push it gently with my thumbs and my pointer. And then I just push it so that I can bring over the dough right on top of that beautiful spinach and cheese filling. So I'm looking to make a half moon shape, and if you need to, you can use a knife to cut the edges, but it doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to see there's 2 ways of doing this. So you can braid this, or you can just use the back of a fork to press these 2 together. I love to braid the edges. I'm using the technique that my friends and I have lovingly named the pinchy fold, which means pinch and fold. All you're doing is you're pinching that edge of dough and you're folding it over, and you create this beautiful scalloped edge, this just pretty little edge on your borreca, which not only looks good, but it's crispy and it's absolutely delicious. So I love it. But if you need to use the back of a fork instead, that's okay too. They're still gonna be crispy and delicious. So now I'm gonna show you a couple of more times, and then of course you get the gist of it. You're just gonna repeat that to make your beautiful 18 borrecas, but I'm gonna show you a couple of more times just to make sure that you get it. So I'm flattening out my dough. I'm checking to make sure it's not stuck to my counter or my wax paper before I start filling it. I made it into an oval shape. I'm using my 2 teaspoons to bring over some of this delicious spinach and cheese filling. I'm making sure to leave plenty of room around it so that I can fold my dough over it. I'm going to use my thumbs, my pointers, whatever I need to push back that spinach as I fold my dough over. Then I'm pressing down because I do want to make sure that both of those pieces of dough become one. And then once I have that half moon shape, I'm doing the pinchy fold. I'm pinching and I'm folding. I'm pinching and I'm folding, and I'm creating a beautiful edge for my borreca. Look at how beautiful that one turned out. So pretty. And then of course, I'm placing them onto my tray that is lined with parchment paper as I go along. And I'm using a large tray, which is big enough for 18 borrecas. But if you don't have a large tray, then you can do a couple of trays. And as I said, when I make these, I many times make really large batches. I have made 80, 100. And when I make these with a group of friends, we make hundreds of these. So it's quite a production, and it's so delicious and well worth it. And each of us take a bunch of them home, and they're just so absolutely yummy. Everyone loves them. So now, as you saw, I'm showing you for the last time, I'm just folding my dough over, making that half moon shape, and I'm pinching and folding my dough to make a beautiful scalloped edge. And then I'm going to put them on my tray that's lined with parchment. and continue the process. If you work a little slower than I do, then maybe you want to cover the ones that you make with some plastic wrap to keep them from drying out. But I work pretty quickly because I've been doing this a very long time. So here are my beautiful 18 borrecas. And yes, I do have some filling over, as I said I would in the beginning. So I'm just going to be baking it off. I just grab a little Pyrex and just spray it with a little bit of nonstick spray. Add that filling right in there, and I'm going to bake it off together with my borrecas as they bake. But of course, you can make another 18 borrecas instead and have 36. Either way, delish. So you grab one large egg and you're going to break it into a small bowl, and you're going to beat it well with a fork. And this is going to be our egg wash. So we're going to use this to coat our borrecas, and it's going to help them get just a little more golden and a little more shiny. And it's just the perfect way to bake your beautiful borreca. And you'll notice that I like to brush it not only on the center, I brush the whole thing, edge and all, because I just want them to be golden and absolutely beautiful. So now, once I've given them all a little coating of that beaten egg, then I'm just going to bring over some grated Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of that cheese right on top of the borreca, one by one. And as I said, it's just going to help them be a little more golden, a little more beautiful, and a little more flavorful. And then I'm going to grab a long, thin knife, and then I'm just going to poke a couple of holes into the top of my borreca. Some people do this, some people don't. I like to, because this way I ensure that none of my borrecas are going to open up as they bake. It's just going to allow that steam to escape, and it's just going to be perfect and beautiful. So now my tray is ready. I'm popping it into the oven along with that side of spinach, and I'm setting a 30-minute timer to allow them to bake. And my kitchen is smelling glorious, and I cannot wait to take a bite of one of these. And here they are 30 minutes later. Look at how beautiful they look, and I only wish you could smell them. They are incredible. They're golden, delicious. You can kind of see that green peeking through. And here's that side of spinach, which is just perfect. You cut it into squares, and it is absolutely delicious. I left it about 3 extra minutes because I kind of put the broiler on over it to just broil the top just a little and give it a little extra color. And then I pulled it out, and just look at these gorgeous spinach and cheese borrecas. You are going to be quite a hit, because whoever tries these is going to fall in love. They are so amazing and they're really not that difficult to make. Don't be intimidated. The grandmas wanted us to think that they were so labor intensive. Yeah, they take a little work, but they're well worth it, and they're really not difficult to make. And they're just absolutely beautiful. So of course, I'm taking them off of the hot tray, and I'm placing them on a cooling rack. And just look at these beauties. They're so gorgeous. I could admire them all day, but of course, at some point, I want to bite into one, because look at how beautiful and inviting they look. And I'm telling you, the smell, there's just something magical about spinach and cheese, and inside of a Sephardic-Turkish Borreca. You just can't beat it. And this dough, thank you, Abuela, for teaching me, because it is phenomenal. They're just so gorgeous. They're perfect for any time, and everyone's going to love them. So once I've allowed them to cool down a bit, then I can transfer them over onto a serving plate. Look at that one. That edge is so gorgeous. They're just so beautiful. I am obsessed. They look absolutely perfect, inviting, and delicious. So enough with the admiring. It's time for me to grab one of these. Look at how beautiful the top, the bottom, that braided edge. It's so gorgeous. This one I'm very proud of. Look at how pretty that looks. And of course, they're not going to be gorgeous, every single one. It doesn't matter if the braid is perfect. It doesn't matter if you use the back of a fork and just press the edges down. They are gonna taste so delicious, and that dough is just flaky and perfect. It's just the perfect vessel to hold that yummy spinach and cheese filling. These are just gonna be so yummy. You are going to fall in love, I'm telling you. So delicious. So amazing. So good. That dough is flaky and perfect. The consistency is absolutely perfect. And that filling, spinach and cheese running throughout from end to end. Look at how perfectly filled they are. And that egg just helps bind them. I did that so you could see just how the dough flakes off because it's perfect. It's light and flaky and crispy and just so absolutely magical. It's delicious. And that edge, I love those edges. Crispy, so good. And that spinach and feta and parm filling, my goodness, it is so tasty. This is a phenomenal, really delicious borreca. So did I tell you or did I tell you that these borrecas were gonna come out crazy good? That flaky dough that I thank my grandmother for all of the time, and I keep her in my thoughts every time I make a different version of a borreca. I absolutely love the dough. It works beautifully. And of course, that filling that we created, super yummy. And you know, if you are Sephardic Turkish, chances are you love spinach. We use it in so many different recipes. We make our bulemas, our spirals out of them, and we just tapadas, fritadas. I mean, so many different things that we make with spinach because it's so tasty, and something magical happens when you mix it with cheeses. And actually, now that I think about it, so I have a fritada that I make with cheddar and parm, and that would probably also make an amazing filling for a spinach borreca. But anyway, I digress. I am so happy you joined me today, and I'm telling you, these borrecas are a must try. Trust me. Nah, better yet, don't trust me, and be sure to try this recipe yourself. That way you can see just how amazing they truly are. And of course, if you enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like it, to write a sweet comment, to share the recipe video with your friends. When you share my link, that really helps my channel grow. It exposes me to other people who may not know me. So thank you for doing that. And of course, if you're not already following me on social media, you can follow me as Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. And if you're not already subscribed here on YouTube, what are you waiting for? I make recipe after recipe, week after week. There are tons of recipes up on my channel. Explore the video tab, explore the playlist tab. Just amazing recipes from around the world, and of course my Sephardic Turkish favorites. Some of them very classic, some of them that I give my own twist to, all of which I know you're going to love. So make sure to check those out. And of course, if you're not already subscribed to Sally That Girl in the Kitchen, subscribe and touch that little notification bell. I don't want you to miss out on any of my new videos. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.